Teammates, we are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the #1 show on innovative teamwork. Great to have you. Looking forward to having you back for more. To my regular listeners, here we have again incredible guest that's doing some absolutely amazing work. And I want you guys, because again, I know you guys are used to me saying that now and you're used to guests delivering. It's very important that you understand the power of, your come up story and, how like finding your audience, creating content, all of that kind of stuff. We're getting ready to dive into. Her name is Miss Elona. It's Elona Lopari, correct?
Yes, it is.
The founder of the Life School and listen, I've been looking at your stuff all day. I'm excited to just talk to you, even just from a perspective of wanting to figure out how to build life schools, be a part of your organization, be a part of what you're doing. So all that being said, welcome to the show. Great to have you.
Thanks so much, Aswan. I love your energy and I love the theme of the show, which is all about teamwork. And I am a big believer in that as well. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, so talk to us a little bit because I know you're currently located in New York, and I went to Stony Brook University. I have a ton of family in Brooklyn. I see the Brooklyn sign right there. So I'm in Florida now, but I'm very familiar with the hustle, the grind of the whole New York mentality, right? And even in Florida, actually, there's probably more New Yorkers in Florida than you would probably think of in certain parts of New York.
Mm-hmm.
But talk to us a little bit about your come up story, because you're not born in the US. You actually had to come up from it was a different country, I believe, right? And you had to come up and you had to actually find your way. Speak to us a little bit about your background and how you were able to get established here, because I know from a personal perspective, that's not an easy place. That's not an easy thing to do, to come to a brand new country and then figure out, and then much less be an entrepreneur and build your business. So speak to us a little bit.
Yeah, let's start there because I think those are really impactful moments, even in the journey that directed where I headed and kind of why I do the work that I do today, because I really believe that everything that happens to us is obviously preparing us for the next phase and stage of our life. But also it's where we learn about ourselves. It gives us life experience, personal and professional. And I value a lot of that as well in my journey. So I moved to New York when I was 15 with my parents. I was the oldest child. And the early memories of New York is, of course, the big, the city with lots of opportunities. That's what I heard my dad say right away when we got here. You can be anything you want here. Make sure you go to school, get a good, degree, and you start heading for the American dream. That was kind of programmed very early on.
Where'd you move from?
From Albania. I'm natively from Albania. Yep, a small country in Eastern Europe. And that's kind of,
I just love the accent, by the way. I could listen to this. Very lovely accent that you kept, and I'm sure the listeners would agree. It's an incredibly lovely accent. So keep going, please.
Thank you. Yes, I guess he always stayed with me, and now it's a mix of New York, but that's it. That's what makes me authentic, because that's been my journey. So I've learned to embrace it and also look at it as my superpower. But yeah, anyway, so that's kind of what happened. I climbed the corporate ladder, got my degree in business management and finance. Earlier memories, of, I guess, challenges that I saw was obviously I had to get a job very fast. I had to start contributing to the family at 15 and all of those things. So I grew up pretty fast with a lot of responsibility, which actually made me a great problem solver very early on. And I didn't know, obviously, this was going to serve me really well in my professional trajectory, so to speak, not only as an entrepreneur, but also the company I work for. I started climbing the corporate ladder. I also happened to be in a good company where they were in growth mode. So they were looking for people like me that, wanted to grow. That's also been a common theme for me. I always, I get bored fast. So I like to, embrace new challenges. I like to learn. I'm very curious. So that's kind of how I got promoted within the company in different roles. I did marketing, HR, sales, and then my latest one was executive C-suite leadership role. However, every journey comes to an end. I started to feel very unhappy, actually, with where I was. And it's one of those things, right? You feel like you get to the top and you're like, okay, I made it. This is it, Dad. I got the American dream. However, I was feeling very unhappy on the inside. Whatever success I had on the outside was really not, it was conflicting with how I was feeling, because obviously I encountered burnout, anxiety, a lot of those, high pressure things that happen when you are at those positions. The company was bought by another company, and that was my clue now to change again, to transition to something else. And at that point, I already was not feeling like that was the right place for me anymore. So that's kind of where I started looking into other avenues, and it didn't feel right for me to go back and put a lot of my experience with working for another company. So I said, let me try entrepreneurship. My husband was also an entrepreneur for many years before that. So I said, listen, girl, you got a lot of experience. Why did you just start offering this on your own and see if you can build your own thing? And that's kind of what I did. 5 years, fast forward now, I started executive coaching, that I did some career coaching, because again, I was also testing my own abilities in a different market, because when you are in a structured environment, it's so different. But when you come out in the real world, so to speak, I had the challenge of, where do I position myself? What is the thing that I do really well? What is the thing that's going to make me happy? What's the thing that I'm really passionate about beyond just, the money, right? The purpose behind why I do what I do. So putting all those pieces together today, I'm very happy and fulfilled to help other entrepreneurs, much like myself, that put purpose first, but now align the purpose and the profit side. And I just put together a lot of my experience in scaling companies, with helping them do just that. So they built a independent company that eventually moves the CEO outside of the company and can run on its own, but also really do more good in the world. And then the CEO can decide, what would be the next step beyond that, whether it's exiting or, leaving that company as a legacy to, their family or loved ones, or whatever decision it is, as long as the company is independently running and also creating more impact and doing good with the service aspect, because I love the service industry and I stay in that. So it's kind of a little bit about
Well, thanks. Thanks.
how.
Yeah, I want to make sure we don't brush over several points in which you just made, because, you know, when you look back on things and you're at this level, first of all, congratulations on the entrepreneurship, and thank you for sharing your journey in such a detailed way. But when you look back on it and you moved here and you said 15 years old, you started to work. That, just like my sister, the same thing. In fact, no, my sister was like 13 years old when she started to work, has not been without a job since, right? I'm curious to know, especially as, hear your perspective on this when it comes to someone that gives advice and, talks to people about burnout and making sure they're actually, doing rewarding work. Do you attribute those hours at 15 and, just constantly not just being a regular teenager and enjoying your life, do you attribute that to leading to the burnout when you were with that company, and that may have been a problem? And how would you say you navigate that decision, especially for a parent who may be dealing with a child that's maybe working too many hours, or a kid who's not working up? How do you kind of structure that conversation when you've been through it on your own?
I love your conversation, because that's actually been my journey, and this, a positive and a negative. I believe
You're
in the
on the
law.
number one show, Innovative Teamwork, girl. This is what we do. This is what we
Yeah,
do.
I love that, because again, I mean, that's kind of how I would answer that, AC. I feel like there's always two sides of anything that we do, whatever we choose to do, right? And some of my decisions early on were unconscious. Like, I thought, like, okay, obviously I'm at the age where I can help. So I started getting my first couple of jobs, obviously without a high pay or any of that, because I didn't have any of the experience. But the positive side is that it taught me discipline. It taught me strong work ethic. It taught me how to stay persistent, determination, because obviously there was a lot of, fear, and I was young and all of these different things. And I even did things that I didn't really enjoy, right?
Exactly.
But all of that was part of that experience, which now today, because I built those habits early on, to me, it's just like who I am. I can't detach the two things, right? And it's a habits that I built early on. So obviously it was easier for me to even move through the discipline required to be successful at the corporation I work for, or even as on my own as an entrepreneur, which is even harder. And discipline is really important. So that's the positive side. Now, the negative side, obviously, I had a lot of inner work to do around my worth being related to achievement, and my worth being related to working, because I thought that if I didn't work and I didn't contribute and I didn't bring in money in whatever situation I was, then what else what was my value in the world? So there was a lot of that happening, which is where anxiety was coming from, which is where the hustle thing is coming from. Like I need to work hard, work hard. And I had, this mindset belief for the longest that in order to get the things I want, I have to work hard. I had no idea that there was other ways to do this stuff.
Right.
So that's kind of where I would run into burnout and anxiety and like, just being just a workaholic at certain phases of my experience. So that was the negative side of your question. But the positive obviously is that, I did gain very strong work ethic early on, and it just made me very skilled because just like anything, the things will repeat. You don't realize it, but you're just learning. And then when I came to the journey of entrepreneurship, I just became addicted to learning more skills because that's how you become valuable as an entrepreneur to solving problems. The more skilled you are, the more you can be efficient and productive and all these things. But I've also learned about another world, which is more the spirituality, kind of being, with myself and realizing things and making decisions not only out of the brain, but also out of the heart and a lot of those different things, which when I learn about them, I love them because I'm like, oh, I can finally, there's a better way to achieve the goals and the things that I want because I've always been positively, into achievement, right? I like to challenge myself. I like to grow. Those are my two very important values. So, I just, when I found there's a better way,
Yeah.
I took that way. And now I'm always learning to kind of balance and be in harmony with those pieces.
Yes, and the point, and especially for you guys tuning in, she used the term learn at least 15 times just now. So again, I don't think there's any way that you're going to be able to avoid burnout if you really love what you do, or if you have a focused mind, the type of, especially the type of people that regularly tune into this show. And if you don't have the mindset and you tune into this show, just know that's the mindset of the majority of people that come into this world. All right. You're going to want to do what you love. You're going to want to go out and work. You want to go out and grind and do all your things, but the learning component has to be there, or you will get taken advantage of. Just like you said, 15-year, I mean, I could only imagine a boss that sees someone like you that's willing to put in the work at 15, in their mind, okay, that's a person doing work that they know she may not be ready for. A lot of stuff that they don't feel like doing because you're willing to do it. And not that you don't want to do it, but you got to be learning in the process. It's the learning process that's so important, and I always use my sister as an example there because she was a daycare counselor at my elementary school. Like she would drop me to school and then go work as a daycare counselor. But now, she's one of the high people that's running Kaiser Permanente, and the component of it, taking care of your kids, taking care of your family, the healthcare, all of these things she was learning in the process. So the long and the short of it is, whenever you go out and you take on a certain venture, the learning has got to be there before you. And you got to get paid. I get it. You got to make sure you're paying your bills. I'm not telling you go out do anything for free, but I'm making sure you understand the importance that you have to learn something every single day, or you will lose. And that brings me to the next point that I wanted to talk to you about. Something that you just mentioned is the fact that you said your husband was also an entrepreneur, while you were going through what you were going through, and then it becomes a situation where you were seeing this example. But I do know for a fact, being an entrepreneur myself, it is challenging to merge those two lives in terms of one entrepreneur and the next entrepreneur. So can you speak a little bit about how you were able to create balance there as you got older, as you left that company? And then, all right, entrepreneurship is like, hey, you got to eat what you kill, and we got to figure it out. I know New York ain't cheap. So,
Yeah, and we've had our moments for
Yeah.
sure, but I guess I did it more the safe way, right? When I was able to, I built my company 2 years while I was still working because obviously I got very skilled at the position that I worked
Yes,
for.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
I was always very strategic. That's actually how my mind works. So I'm like, okay, here's the plan. Here's what I want to do. Now, what are the steps to get me there? I'm not so much of an impulse. Like decision maker. That's not how I make decisions. So that's kind of what I did. I hired someone to figure out, okay, how do I put the pieces in place, a mentor, And then on the other side, I was still working and then aligning my, removing myself and my time from things that I didn't need to focus on so that I could grow it. And then when I felt comfortable enough, I made the leap. Now, that does not mean that everything stays steady in entrepreneurship, right? I still had my ebbs and flows with income and inconsistency. However, I think as far as the relationship is concerned, it connected us further because now we're in a, common journey. When you work for someone and when you work for yourself, it's honestly two different mindsets, two different, ways that you look at the world. And I think that connected us and it made us more appreciative, I have more appreciation for myself. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been doing this for some years, especially on the days where I didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel or I had to learn new skills again. And, it felt like challenging because anything new, it's uncertain, right? And it's not always daisies and rainbows. So on those days, low level blame, I'm like, oh my gosh, you did this to me. Like, I can't believe it. This is so hard. I want to quit and I want to go get a steady paycheck.
It is easy to go
I
back
had
to
those moments.
mindset. Yeah, and it's the moments, and it actually it makes me think of a book titled "Mindset" by Carol Dweck, and she ended it by saying they worked happily ever after. They didn't live that; they worked happily ever after, not lived happily ever after. And I love that distinction that she actually made because too often, and I teach now at the school, too often do we teach kids the kind of a negative connotation when it comes to work. But if we can associate like work being a positive thing to young people, they can start these conversations a whole lot earlier. You can really start thinking about, all right, what it is I want to do. Like my niece was maybe, at least she was what, 10 or 11 years old, she started selling candles. Like her and my sister are making candles, selling it, pushing it. One Christmas, man, she made a killing, man, just doing it. So, you can always do something in regards to just figuring out what exactly it is you want to do. And, I want to make sure I give you the opportunity as well to speak. You're a multi-published author. You don't just have one book, you have several books. But more importantly, you've been able to turn that into something called the life school that you founded as well. Just walk us through the entire process. Because me, myself, like I was telling you before we started recording, as an author that has a goal of opening up my own school one day, I'm like curious in terms of what were the steps? How'd you do it? I might be just like one of the listeners when it comes to this because I'm just curious and how you were able to package everything out and build it out the way you built it out.
Yeah, I think that they came with time, right? The more I took action, the more I learned, the more I stayed current. I showed up for the things that I felt were really important. And most importantly, I always did the connection between what am I doing now and how is this, helping me with kind of what I want to create in my life a couple of years down the line. I've always been that kind of person that worked more in the future than in the present moments. I take my decisions and make them that. So obviously, I learned about all the different ways to be able to grow my own brand, personal brand, and thought leadership, and also the work that I was doing. How can I impact more people with that? How can I share it in different avenues, not just, with the things that I was doing? So the more I learned, the more things started to show up for me. I became a contributing author to another community and book with my first chapter.
Was that the first one? Yeah, you were just
that was my first one.
yeah. There you go. Makes sense.
So that started the book writing journey. And I love the process of writing because I've always been a speaker and I love speaking. And, this was one of the skills that I also even need in my corporate career. So it was something that I was very comfortable with. And the writing piece, I'm like, I don't know if I can be a writer and all of that. But anyway, as soon as I wrote my first one, I said, okay, I love it. This is what I want to do because to me, it felt like a permanent channel or a way to package my experience or personal and professional, where it could be like a legacy product. Like my kid can read it when they're older, they can give it to their friends. Speaking of youth, I love youth as well. I think obviously that's the future. Or my people could be reading the things that I have going on. And digital content is great. I mean, I have a large library, I create a lot, I'm very active, but there's nothing like a good book where I can even structure my own processes and methodologies of how I got some results. So that's actually how I did, I kind of just intuitively make decisions based on my own experience. So because I loved the first, I said, okay, let me put my the chapter, let me write my first book or write my personal professional journey, because you never know who this could impact and who could read the book and get those aha moments. And plus, I've always been fascinated, regarding when I read a book that's 100 or 200 pages, it took someone to live 20, 30 years to actually put all that experience into a book. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm inhaling their life experience. So that's just making me even more wiser, or
Right.
giving me more clarity around the things that I want to do. So I just love that process because I'm also a reader. I read a book a month and I never will stop that process myself. So, and then so it's how I did my other one. I said, let me put my framework that I, utilize to help companies scale. And I put a lot of different pieces together around how to brand and market and sell and create the systems and then hire and build the teams, which is pretty much the fundamentals of any business. So that was my second. And then my third one is all about leadership and leveling up at the next level. So I guess my books have also mirrored my evolutionary journey in my company and my personal life. And it's just a way to document all of that for people to read.
Yeah, so there's an important point I want to make sure that I make to any aspiring authors out there as well, is that when you're talking about thought leadership, it is not necessarily about your story as much as it's about how it's going to impact readers. And I've heard several coaches tell me this on multiple occasions, is no one actually cares that much about your story until you can organize it and package it in a way that's going to be beneficial to them, and then you're able to serve your people in the best way that they want. And this is important as well, because I actually just had a guest on, the previous guest that was on. He was talking about the problem that a lot of companies have. He was talking about the CEOs, that they get so into the shareholders and the logos and the branding and all that, they start to lose sight of what the customer actually wants. They start to lose sight of what the client actually wants. So can you speak to that a little? Because I know you mentioned that you have a framework, you have a training, so to speak, in which you help businesses move a little more cohesively, and they're able to, what are some of the benefits and things like that, if there's a business owner listening in that would want to work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I utilize the framework of branding, marketing, sales systems, and team, and connecting all of those. Obviously, with always with keeping the end in mind and collecting, understanding, and being clear around the vision, mission, and values of any company, and how that aligns with a lot of the metrics that drive profit. Because you do need both of those for the company to be sustainable, for the company to utilize a lot of those funds for other things, maybe start a nonprofit, maybe align their business model to another social cause that they care about, right? All these other things that usually most people that are very, driven to contribute and help and serve are always attracted towards. So those are the things. But back to kind of what you talked about, I think I've always led myself, or kind of seen the people that I worked with that always worked on this growth and continuous improvement of their service to always be very consumer focused and centric. Because as long as you're focused on always improving what you're doing, you're always going to be improving the results and the transformation that you're able to give your customer. So that's got to always be core focus as to why you do what you do. Because if you're focused on that transformation, then everything that you implement in your day-to-day, it's got to be connected to that. So I think that's one of the things that I've seen companies struggle. They're doing a lot of different projects, going a million directions, but they don't necessarily know how to connect all the different pieces to the one thing, which would be, again, why are we here? Why do we do what we do? And what is the transformation and impact that we want to create? So as soon as you can focus and get to the core and get grounded when you might be in growth mode, which is pretty challenging because there's a lot of chaos. There's a lot of, sometimes you got to break down all the older structures and systems to rebuild. It's like personal life, right? When you go through hell, you just like, oh my gosh, you sometimes it feels chaotic.
Yes.
And it's on purpose. So yeah, I think if you just make that as part of your vision, values, and mission, it will always stay top of mind. And just like anything else, if you also create a healthy culture, your team will obviously mirror that towards your experience with your clients. So yeah, it's got to be top of mind. Honestly, that's why a business should exist. Without your results and the way that you're serving, you just don't even have a business, right? And you're going to go under very fast. So
Yeah,
it's
I'm glad
very,
you said
very
that because I've been a part of several businesses that have gone under. They that use that term very specifically. They've gone under. And the question I do have for you, speaking of that, is how do you deal with that stubborn person though? Like, that we're in business, there's a lot of like stubborn people. Just say I don't know any other word, but there's a lot of stubborn business owners out there that you would try to present this to them, but it's hard to kind of crack that nut. How do you work around it, or still able to get the client and deal with that issue?
I don't look at it that way. To me, if someone is problem aware and solution aware, then that's obviously those are the best clients that we all want, right? Because they're just like, okay, I have a problem, and
Yeah, we would love
I,
though. If
I
all the clients will. I
I
love how you
trust
said
you
all the
enough
clients
to be able
will.
to help me solve it.
Right.
And then the stubborn piece is like, I guess they haven't reached that pain point in their journey to act on it.
Mhm.
Right? So it's okay. It's their own journey. I don't take it personal. Because my energy is always open and try to add value and build trust, I really always attract that. So
Yeah.
thankfully. And every time I do attract more of the other side, maybe there's actions that I'm taking to be able to match that. And I kind of take a look at my own ways that I operate, or even my teams. So I think if you just, stay open and just don't take anything personal. If someone is stubborn, I mean, I know a lot about neuroscience. Maybe they had bad experiences, they're closed off, and you
Hmm.
know, being
Actually had
there and
Catherine
to
McCord.
have
We had her
empathy.
on the show, or we had her on the show a couple of weeks ago. Catherine McCord. But
Yeah,
no,
exactly. So lead with empathy. Lead with empathy. Try to not judge people, because I know how easy it is when you're frustrated to just be like, oh my gosh, you're a pain in the butt, and all of that. But um, and be clear on your expectations, right? Because the more clear you are at communicating, the more the other person understands that these are the how we're going to operate if you decide to go into that type of relationship. But boundaries are going to be very important if you have that type of relationship. But you can choose to go in or not, right? Because just like clients choose us, I choose whether do I want to work with somebody or not. And I never build my business out of lack or scarcity or hustle mentality of like, oh my God, it's only this one client, or my competitor is going to take my client. I don't operate in those low level stuff. To me, is a big world. Everybody's on their journey.
right.
There's enough for everyone. There's resources. My own authenticity will attract the right person for me, even though me and you could do the same. Like
Mm.
there's certain like bigger macro stuff that I believe that I just don't sweat the tiny little stuff that I really feel like it's a waste of energy, because this stuff is bigger than our little brain trying to work under scarcity because we might need the money, or we just, I don't know what motivation you can have to bring in just anyone and everyone. You shouldn't work with anyone and everyone. You shouldn't be for everyone and anyone. And the more clear you are around what are your values and you operate under those, the more you'll start to have the right people around you. And if people don't gel with that, it's going to be very clear. Maybe your values and my values are in conflict, and I don't think we can work together. And that's it. It's very simple. It's all about human relationships at the end of the day.
Yeah, and you also actually just mentioned something as well when it comes to just staying top of mind. Because if you do run it, there are certain situations where a person just may not be ready. Things change in life happens, and staying top of mind is something that's your job to do as a business owner. It's your job to make sure you are staying top of mind with people by constantly putting out content. So, I want to be very respectful of your time. Can you just tell people, what's next? What do you see coming out the pipeline? Where do you see your business and everything you're doing in the next 10, maybe 5, 10 years?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think serve, right? Because if you have that mindset, just people, we all go through a lot of different things, and just, be in service. And if that's your belief and value, then eventually, if you are at the right time in the right moment when the person is looking for you, they're going to be there because you've done your job. They can find me at elonaloparicoaching.com. I have a couple of free resources for people that are looking to scale their companies, or maybe they're at the phase of growth where they don't have the consistency yet with their sales. Those are really the two main problems. So why people come to me. They either, don't have consistency with their cash flow or sales, or they already have been past that stage and now they're more in mature stage and they're kind of like stalled at a certain level and
Right.
they're looking to get to the next level. So those are the two things. As far as my vision and plans, I'm always going to grow my company. I've just expanded more of my teams. I just expanded to new markets. Europe, actually. That's kind of what my plans are. And yeah, so I mean, that's kind of what I'm always focused on: expansion, scaling, and ensuring that I stay focused around those values, vision, mission that we have to ensure that we help entrepreneurs and CEOs scale their purpose and profits and do more good in the world, and flip the script based on kind of when you compare it to traditional business where it was just strictly profits. There's a better way to do business, and you're going to ensure that you have more profits if you understand how to come out on the other side and align both, and keep that top of mind. So that's kind of what my bigger mission is, and that's kind of where I am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And all that will be included in the show notes as well. So, Elona, the final thing I do with all my guests, all the shows, the way we close out the shows here, is I want you to use your imagination a little bit. You are young 16, 15-year-old teenager. There's the opportunity to go to this party, to go, go to this game, then go to a party, go drink and all, but you got work. I want you to pretend that that teenage girl has come into the Zoom room, give her some words of encouragement, and we'll officially close.
Well, if she can do both, I think that would be optimal, because I do feel that every phase and stage of life has its experiences. And someone that always kind of chooses work, so to speak, at that age, obviously you're going to have some of those regrets later on. So if you can, figure out a way to manage your time, that would be best. However, if you're trying to make a decision between the party or going to work, connect that to what you're trying to accomplish in your life.
Yes.
And if it feels like, in line with kind of what you're trying to accomplish in your goals, then maybe that will make your decision. But I don't think it's like a clear-cut thing. Depends on circumstances and situations as well. But looking back now, I probably wouldn't have been so responsible and like hard on myself during certain times. I would have been more curious and playful in all those experiences and testing things, because I think that's at that age, that's what it should be about. And if you don't go through that, you will kind of have your teenage years in the 40s or 50s and all of that. So, I think every phase of life's got its experiences. And I think at that time is, it's important to make mistakes, fall, get up, test things and all of that. As long as you have good people around you, and you're always, trying to understand sort of where you're heading and why it's important for you. I think those are the things that keep you in compass and in check.
Yes, yes. And also I want to make sure I add a little bit to that, because as a young teenager, the fact that you're faced with that decision is a positive thing. Just know where it is you want to go. And then maybe, hey, you can tell your boss, hey, I got to do this because this is going to help me get here. It's going to bring you more clients. Even make a deal. Like I worked at a gym, so make a deal. Hey, I'll go to this party. I'll bring a couple of my friends in the gym for a new workout or something. Figure out a compromise and get those skills early, which is great. So I love to see the professional development in you, just asking that question. You thought of yourself, you thought a little bit, and you said, hey, you know what, maybe you can have a little bit of fun, and you can kind of see the balance and the constant learning. And that's my goal for every listener of this show, everybody that tunes in regularly, constantly learning. So all that being said, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.